is the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 6. And it got some really nice improvements,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I
In
did.
some areas that I would say matter to mass consumers,
Right.
not necessarily power users. And it's $100 more expensive this year.
That is true as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been, I mean, we've had this for a while now.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
got we got this phone around the same time that we got the Z Fold 6.
yeah,
But then I took a 2 week trip to visit some family, and then when I got back, we had to play some catch up.
yeah.
Apple and Google released their stuff, so here we
It's
are.
been a busy season.
Yeah,
But I'm excited because it kind of worked out. Because we've had it for a longer time, we've got to see the durability aspect of this time that we've had it, but also some creative tests and use case scenarios because of the practicality of it. So I'm excited. It is a really unique
it
phone.
is a really cool phone.
So I'm excited. But without further ado, it's time to play the game.
Time to play the game.
Now, if you're watching this video, there is a big chance that you've owned, are owning, or have used a foldable phone, and more specifically, a flip phone, a Samsung Galaxy phone. The reason we say that is because it's such a unique phone, not only because of the design or because of the build, but because of the use case scenario and how practical it actually is. You know, there's pros and cons for every review that we do, every product that we test. But specifically on this one, there are going to be pros and cons because of the use and the practicality of the design. But that's just how things go, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and it's such a fun phone. Like I think,
It really is.
yeah, like
Yeah.
whenever you look at traditional slab smartphones, like I still have my S24 Ultra.
Yep.
Great device, right? But at the same time, it doesn't it doesn't really instill that same level of excitement.
Yeah, I feel like when it comes to slap phones, we've reached this cap or ceiling of revolution
Yeah.
every year.
Yeah, and even though the updates for things like the Fold 6 and the Flip 6 have gotten kind of iterative as well,
Right, right.
there's still just something so fun about taking these out of the box. They still have that kind of like retro and futuristic vibe where like whenever you're done with a phone call, you just
It's crazy to call that retro, but you're right.
yeah,
You're right.
retro
yeah.
and futuristic
Yeah.
though, right? Because this is
a modern phone. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, these are still so much fun. Of course, like you said, there's good and bad in any product, but using one of these, especially in this form factor, is such a blast. So right off the bat, I gotta say, this is a very good looking phone.
10 out of 10.
Yeah, especially in this blue color that we have. Now, I will say, if you were to compare it to last year, there's not a lot that's different.
Yep.
As a matter of fact, the only way you can tell apart last year's Flip 5 from this year's Flip 6 are these colored camera rings.
Yep.
And I think Samsung did that on the Fold this year as well.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the only way. That's the only way you can tell them apart. Not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's one of those situations where if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, you can say that.
Yeah. And at least Samsung did decide to make more positive modifications to the hinge,
Right.
which I think is super important. So the hinge is actually firmer than it was last year. And I think Samsung's now at a point where they're making positive changes to the hinge at least like every year or every other year.
Right. It's pretty consistent.
Yeah, but the extra firmness in the hinge is going to help you with things like placing the phone at like all sorts of different angles without it like closing shut
Yeah.
or just like flipping open, right? And I will say, like, I know you're going to talk about the display and stuff like that, but I will say that the firmness of that hinge, I think also helped with the crease.
Oh, yeah.
Like out of all the foldable phones we've tried this year, this phone has like the least noticeable crease, in my opinion, as you're using it day to day. If it's one thing that you should continuously improve and nail on a foldable phone, it has to be the hinge.
100%.
Yeah.
I agree. And honestly, even with our use case scenario with this phone for having it this long, the longevity and the durability has proven and passed every single test that we've given it. So it's really reliable. I do give him props, and I agree. It's funny because you look back in previous years with other foldable phones, and the crease back then we said that it was great, and now it's getting better, which
Yeah.
is crazy because I can only hope that in the future years there's not going to be a crease at all. So we can only hope. But speaking of the crease in the display, there's improvements, there's changes, but there's not that many. Now, just to get that out of the way, we're looking at an LTPO display, so it is an improvement. It was an LTPO last year, so now it is. Big bonus. The brightness is better. We're going from 1750 nits to 2600 nits peak max brightness.
That's huge.
So if you're outside and you use it outside all the time, you are going to notice that's a big difference. So I
Yep.
think I give them props for that one. And the bezels are more narrow. So you get more real estate for the same size, same shape. You have more display. It's very minimal, but it is bigger. So I got to give them props for something like that.
Yeah, and you know what? They did trim down the bezels a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's still just so narrow.
That is
Right.
true.
Like the
That is
the
very
display
true.
itself is still just so narrow. So
Yeah.
like for context, like I have massive like hands. So once I get like two hands on this phone,
Yeah.
it's dwarfed like significantly. So not necessarily a deal breaker for a lot of people.
Right,
I
right.
see a surprising amount of people using phones like the Flip, and they seem to be doing just fine with it. For me, I think I still prefer the size and the aspect ratio of a traditional slab phone.
And it's not even the fact that we're hating on it, but realistically speaking, a lot of content and applications and websites are designed for a wider aspect ratio. So it's just a practicality of what you're gonna get if you use a form factor like this one.
Yeah, I still much prefer the type of size and aspect ratio that phones like the OnePlus Open and the Pixel 9 Pro Fold try to achieve.
Right.
This would be dope if it was maybe a little bit shorter
Right.
and a little bit wider. So when you open it up, it would mimic like an S24. Not even like the
Right.
Ultra, but like an S24.
Right.
I understand that that would obviously hamper the cover display a little bit, which we'll get to in a minute. But just something worth mentioning in terms of how narrow that internal display is. But the quality of that internal display is still very much Samsung.
Now looking at the outside of the phone, where of course we gotta notice that cover display, which numbers wise, it it hasn't changed.
Identical.
Yeah, we're looking at the same resolution, same materials, same size, 60 hertz. Yeah, but it's good. Don't get us wrong. It's very practical. So we just gotta give them that because we keep repeating this. But if it's not broke, why fix it? And that's just another time that we use it in this review.
Yeah, which is really interesting. The cover display was made larger on the Flip 5.
Right.
That was like a
It
like
was
a
a good
really
change.
cool thing, right?
Yeah.
Motorola drops their line of like Razr phones.
Yeah.
And then Motorola does this really cool thing where they've incorporated almost the entire front panel, right? Even around the two cameras, right? And that is kind of your cover display. And that has a lot more, let's say, functionality. Like you
Right.
can do a lot more. Samsung's still done a great job, I think, with giving you access to a lot of different widgets on here
Right.
that are going to give you quick pieces of information. And of course, like you can access your notifications if you really wanted to. You could text people back from the cover display.
Yeah.
It's going to be a truncated keyboard and a little difficult, but you could absolutely do it.
Right.
So there are definitely circumstances. Maybe you want to do a quick maths on the calculator,
Quick maths.
right? Check the weather, check your alarms, check your notifications, text people back, right? Check your call logs. There's a good amount of things that you can still do on this cover display that definitely add to the functionality.
And one of the things that we were talking about is the way I see something like this is it does benefit your experience because you don't have to go out of your way to open up the phone and flip it open and use it for quick things like that.
Yep.
But the way I would explain it to someone that's never used a cover display like this one, it kind of feels like just a smartwatch on your phone. So
Yeah.
you have the same accessible things that you have on a smartwatch on the front of your phone without having to open it. So any quick things that you would normally do on a smartwatch, it would be the same thing on this phone.
Yeah, a smartwatch with like the cameras built in. That's like my favorite thing.
Yeah.
Like using this phone, you can quick swipe access the camera and you can literally just record yourself, take photos of yourself, and it's going to use that high quality 50 megapixel sensor, which we'll get to here in a minute. And that is really cool.
It's the best
because
thing.
when it's in this form factor, it's so easy to capture photos and videos and it still fits so comfortably in your hand.
Yeah.
That's still an amazing feature regardless of how many generations. And of course, we love a good spec bump.
Always.
And that is what the Z Flip 6 got. So internally, we're looking at the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. It is the flagship Snapdragon for 2024, at least for now. We'll see what OnePlus drops here soon with the 13.
I'm
But
excited.
that's for another video.
Yeah.
RAM was also upgraded across the line. Like regardless of whether you go 256 or 512, it's now 12 gigs of RAM,
Right.
which is great. And there's been an improvement to the water and dust resistance rating,
Right.
specifically the dust aspect. So we went from an IPX8 last year to an IP48 this year. So there's been some improvement to dust protection.
And honestly, I don't know where you guys stand on this, but it's already intimidating to bring your phone near water if it's a normal slap phone. A flippable, don't even get me started.
Yeah.
Because even though there is a rating, you know, you do what you want. I'll say that. But it is in there. And when it comes to internally, there is an improvement on the battery. I think one thing that we've talked about recently is with phones getting more powerful, with a lot of new features coming into play, the battery normally is affected. But in this case, they improved it from last year. We went from 3,700 milliamps to 4,000 milliamps, keeping the same weight and size, which I gotta give it to them. That's impressive. But one thing that we've also noticed with previous generations of this phone is the fact that with longer use and heavy use of this phone, it would tend to get hot, it would tend to get warm, and because of that, the battery life would be greatly affected. But Samsung managed to include a vapor chamber, a large vapor chamber, if anything, that on a phone like this, it's impressive. And that allows you to, one, use the phone for longer and not feel the temperature go up too much, but also increase the battery life. So overall, the improvement on the experience, on the use, and the practicality has increased a lot.
Yeah, we didn't necessarily struggle with any battery life throughout the testing
Not at
period.
all.
I mean, if you're gonna use the phone very, very heavily throughout the day, hours of screen on time and
Right.
doing all sorts of stuff on it, then sure, like you can definitely kill it within a day. One thing to know too is that for wired charging, it is limited to 25 watts on this phone. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's like 0 to full in like an hour and 45. Like it's not as fast as let's say your Galaxy S24s. But I mean that's just a small detail that I feel like a lot of people probably aren't going to care about.
Yeah, but it's worth mentioning.
Yeah, and of course, given that it is a Galaxy, it does have all these new hardware features and stuff like that, or I should say performance improvements. There are a slew of AI features.
Yeah.
Call assist, chat assist, transcription assist, note assist.
Wheelchair
My
assist.
favorite one, and they're all driven by Galaxy AI,
Yep.
right? My favorite one is still Interpreter.
That, dude.
That one's dope,
That
right?
one's dope.
Yeah. So essentially, and it works so well on a foldable form factor, right? Because the person who's holding the phone and talking will see content on their screen, and then the person that the information is being translated to can see it in their language on the cover display, which I think that's like next level.
It's as practical as you can get.
Yeah, especially compared to the Slab smartphone experience. So, yeah, there are AI features, not necessarily anything new or exclusive to the Flip lineup, and they're useful. And we got one spec bump whenever it comes to the cameras.
That's crazy, dude.
Yeah.
On an $1,100 phone.
Yeah. We got one spec bump when it comes to the cameras. So the wide angle lens has now been upgraded on the Flip 6 from a 12 megapixel to a 50 megapixel.
I mean, it is a good change.
Yeah, and it still has the 12 megapixel ultra wide. Now, I will say that those two lenses are from the S24 line. So there's not necessarily like a third telephoto,
Right.
but you at least have the wide and the ultra wide from the entry flagship model.
Of this year.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think it's one thing that now that you mentioned that it is an improvement, right? We're going from 12 to 50, so it is a big jump. But when it comes to the camera, it's not, we just got to be honest, it's not a professional grade camera system, at least in smartphones. It's not even if you keep it within Samsung, it's not the same as a Samsung Galaxy Ultra. The Ultra has the best camera system and honestly top 3 smartphones of the year probably.
Yeah.
So you're gonna get good pictures. There might be a little oversaturation. I think that's Samsung's signature look.
Yeah.
You can't take macros, even though there is an ultra wide camera. There's no macro option, which has been more common lately with smartphones. And one good note to consider is that you also are able to now record 4K 60 on your selfie camera.
Selfie camera. Yeah.
Which I don't know what the actual use case is for that. But if you're someone that wants to take high resolution selfie videos, you totally can. But ultimately, it's a good camera system, not amazing. If we're trying to keep it objectively, I honestly would probably give it a 6 or 7 out of 10, but no higher than that. It's not bad, but it's not amazing. So it's just something that I feel like we should consider.
Yeah, and I think for the use case scenario, like Samsung is obviously catering the Flip more so to like the mass consumer that probably wants a slightly different phone experience.
Right.
Like you want to have a flagship phone that is durable and just so happens to fold.
Right.
And with the use case scenarios that come with this type of form factor, I think the target demographic, Samsung is targeting like the content creators that are on the go or like
Right.
need a good solution without necessarily investing in like a ton of hardware. So you can literally just prop the phone up in like an L shape like this and then adjust the hinge and take all sorts of photos and videos. All right, so this is a test of the 50 megapixel wide angle.
It's I
Yeah, taking a video before we actually film the review.
testing it out.
This is pretty
You
cool.
know how it goes.
Actually, you know what? I wonder if... So we have this propped up in kind of like a tent mode almost right now on top of something on the island.
When I do it upside down.
No, I wonder how well it's going to capture audio like this.
Oh, because the
Right?
mics could be covered.
Yeah, the mics could be covered. So this is, I mean, just one of the many versatile features that the Flip has in terms of the ability to capture content. If that's something super important to you, you could prop it up on anything, open it up as a tent, and then boom, you can just start recording, which is kind of what we did here. Okay, so we're going to test. Yeah, so that should be 1080p. Right, and this should actually be in landscape mode. So what we did
does look a lot better.
Yeah. So what we did right now is we are just about to film the review for this phone, but we have the phone propped up on like a, what is this?
A jar.
A jar on the island, and we're like testing out how easy it is to kind of just fold the phone in different ways,
Right.
and actually like record yourself making content, I guess.
And I think it's practical, you know, you can do for things like that, but also a lot of people take family pics if there's like a dinner, especially with the holidays coming on.
That's a good point.
And you can prop it up somewhere in the house and not having to worry about a giant tripod or a professional camera in your house. So this is really practical. For sure.
And this is being captured on the main 50 megapixel sensor, and this is at 1080p.
Preview.
Yeah. We have it right now to where we have the selfie preview on, so we can actually see ourselves as we're recording this video.
Which even that's another plus, because normally you prop up a phone and you can't see what you're actually taking a picture. It's so helpful to see what's in frame and what's not. So.
Yeah, this is cool.
So there you have it. When it comes to the cover display, it is practical. You can have some use case scenarios that are unique when taking pictures and videos. And honestly, if you're someone that likes to go to the streets and prop your phone up to record a TikTok dance or something like that, you totally can. Hey man, it's 2024.
I know.
People do that nowadays.
I know.
And this is a great phone to do something like that. But overall, it is a great phone. I think, like we mentioned earlier in the video, it's a very unique phone. And I think if you come from a Galaxy Z Flip line where you already own one or you've used one in the past, some of the things that you heard in this video are going to be very familiar, especially when it comes to the experience. But if you're someone that's never owned one and wants to give it a shot, please do. I think it's a great experience. If you haven't tried one, try one. But I would also say that don't put high expectations, because it's such a unique case of owning a phone like this one that I feel like it's almost an acquired taste. So go try it out. Don't give it too much of an expectation, just because you might end up returning it.
Yeah, and I would say, like, if you do currently have a Z Flip, let's say you have a Z Flip 5 and you're wondering if you should upgrade, I'd probably pass, unless you absolutely need the 50 megapixel camera.
Yeah,
I would probably pass. If you're in something like a 2 or like a 3 or a 4,
I think there's more, even just a design and build quality improvements. 100%.
Yeah, so I would say any generation outside of Z Flip 5, it's probably worth upgrading to the 6.
Yeah.
Right? So let's talk about pricing, storage, and colors, because there's 7 colors for this phone, right?
Yeah.
So 2 storage options, 256 gigabyte
Yep.
and 512. So no 128, which I actually like, but no 1 terabyte, which is also really interesting. Yeah. Now, each one, regardless of which one you go with, has 12 gigs of RAM, which is really, really good. Price points of $1,099 for the 256 and $1,219 for 512. Yeah. Now those, I mean, with Samsung, you can almost always find their stuff on sale.
Oh, yeah.
Both storage options are currently, at the time of us making this video, on sale for like $170 off. Right?
There you go.
So you could get the 512 right now for cheaper than you could get the 256 whenever it first launched. And that doesn't even include trade-in. Now let's talk about colors. 3 Samsung online exclusive. There's so many of them. I actually have them on my Ultra right now. Crafted black, peach, and white. The crafted black, we had the Fold 6 in.
Oh, yeah.
That carbon
that was
fiber.
nice. That was great.
That color is sick, right? Now, as far as standard colors, yellow, mint, silver shadow, and this really nice blue color that we have on the table as well. So you have a plethora of color options, but not a plethora of storage options.
Which is very interesting because we usually see it the other way, but there you have it. Of course, any thoughts, let us know in the video. Thank you for staying in this journey of this video. What was your favorite part of the video? Mine too. My favorite part was... Please subscribe. Let us know what you think. Drop it in the comments. Share
it's time to go. It's time to go.